Okay, we've talked a little bit about money. Money is the way we transfer work from one person to another. Cash is one place to store work. The other thing we can do is trade work. So I've worked and I've gotten my cash, and I turn around and say, oh, you want some? Okay, here you go. I will loan it to you. So you're in debt to me. And so I want my money back eventually, but I also want a little bit of interest. That little bit of interest, that little extra of the reason I would lend it to you. It's the incentive for me to lend to you. Well, now, from my perspective is I've lent it out to you. I didn't buy anything. I lent it out to you, but I'll have more money when I get the loan back. So I'll be able to buy more things with it. So I've saved, I've worked, and I've saved, and I lend it out to you, and then eventually in the future I'll be able to buy more things with that money, and I'm not buying anything right now. So I'm pushing off my purchases, but I'll be able to buy more in the future. Well, take it from the other side. If you borrow money, you're saying, I want to buy something now, and I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to work for it. I'm going to buy it now, and then in the future, I will work for you and give you all of my work and a little bit more. So those $100 pair of shoes, if we borrow the $100 and we say we're going to pay 10% interest on it, I'll give you $10 for loaning me the $100. So now I used to have to work 10 hours, so $10 an hour for those shoes. Now I have to pay $110 back. Now I have to work 11 hours for those shoes. So you have to put an extra hour in if you want to use somebody else's money and get the hours or get the shoes now. Well, what happens to a lot of people is they love the idea of I get the money and I don't have to work now. And then it turns around and they say, okay, not only do you have to give me 10 hours and you get nothing for it, you have to give it to whoever you borrowed the money from, but you also have to work an extra hour. And they go, wait, I really like the idea of spending the money, borrowing the money and spending it. I really don't like the idea of working and not getting anything for it. Paying back the debt becomes really quite difficult. At least mentally, I've already got this, why would I want to go work for it? Well, because you have to pay the loan back. And so you can see how thinking about money and thinking about debt in those terms might change your decision making. Now, I like to turn the word debt into something else, because what debt really does is magnify the results of your decision making. So if you use debt for an appreciating asset, the asset goes up in value, then you have magnified your results in a positive way. If you use debt for a depreciating asset, an asset that goes down in value, you've magnified your losses or you've magnified your cost. So let's look at this in a very common example. Debt. The word I like to change the word debt into is leverage, because it magnifies the result of the spending. So in this example, we have a house. The price of the house was $500,000. The loan on the house was $400,000. And the equity, or the down payment, if you will, was $100,000. So what happens if the house goes up in value? As you can see, the 10% next to the $500,000, house goes up 10%. The value now becomes $550,000. The loan, we still owe the loan on it, so we owe most of the $400,000. We're just going to round that to $400,000. And of course, the equity now has gone up from 550 or from 100 to 150. So the equity, or your value in the house, your asset, the cash that you could take out of the house, has raised by 50%. So you can see a 10% raise in the house is a 50% raise in your equity. So you can see that houses, because there's debt involved, are leveraged. And that leverage makes them a significant payoff when the house goes up in value. This is why people often say their best investment is their house. Well, of course, they leveraged it up 4 to 1, and it pays off. If it goes up, it pays off handsomely. Leverage works both ways, however. So let's just reverse the process. If you look at this slide and take the 500 down 10%, that of course would be 450. The loan's still 400. Now your equity that used to be 100 falls to $50,000. So you've lost 50% of your money. So you can see that the amount of leverage you have in a transaction, because whoever you loaned the money to has they have no claim on the return. If it could be higher, it could be low, it doesn't matter. You just got to pay them back the money. So all the mortgage companies out there, they don't care how much your house goes up. You get that money. They know that. They just get their loan value back. So when you think about how leverage works and how debt works, it magnifies your result. so that whatever happens, if you buy something that goes up in value, you have a bigger win. You have more equity in the investment. If you use debt and it goes down in value, it magnifies the downward result. As you all know, we had a housing crisis, and you can see what happened there. People borrowed almost no money down on loans, and the minute that they went down in value, the people were underwater or had negative equity in the home, and you could see how easy it was to walk away. It's like, I have only put a few $1,000s into this, or if anything at all, and of course it went down. Well, I'm not going to wait for it to come back up and make all the payments on a house that's underwater. I'll just walk away. And so we can see that that would be a widespread problem if all housing went down at once, which of course it did, and became a huge calamity. So you can see that leverage and debt, very interchangeable term. If you just think of debt as leverage, and you think of it as, oh, do I really want to lever up this transaction? Do I want to magnify the result? Well, what do we usually borrow money on that doesn't go up in value? First thing that comes to mind is cars. Cars usually end up being worth zero. We borrow money on them because we want a really nice car, and so we've magnified our result and increased our cost for transportation because we take out loans. Now, there's plenty of zero interest rate loans, and I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't borrow for a car. It's very expensive to buy a car otherwise, and I know most of you will end up at a car payment or at some point, and that's okay. But remember, it's magnifying your results, so you're paying more for the car. So think about debt as leverage, and it'll help you make better financial decisions. Let's keep going and talk about this interest portion.